in the precinct is Abra Barbier, somewhere in the precinct. Abra, over to you.
And butter issues and social justice, because I have with me at the moment Minister Enoch of the Good Party, and that is something that the Good Party has been very passionate about leading up to this budget and in previous years. It's social and economic justice. I think that's what you spoke about when we spoke earlier this week. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Well, I think we need to stop talking about poverty alleviation and start talking about poverty eradication. What the finance minister needs to do is, first of all, obviously not increase the tax burden on South Africans, including VAT, which would disproportionately affect poorer households. The government needs to, and the finance minister needs to, look at all of the programs that are earmarked as poverty alleviation programs and test them against the simple question: would a cash transfer to the beneficiaries have a greater impact for that beneficiary? So in other words, are South Africans who are living with some sort of poverty alleviation program, would they not be better off receiving a cash transfer in the form of a basic income grant? And let's look at wasteful programs and projects that are not having a real impact on South Africans. 18 million South Africans qualify for this SRD grant of 370 Rand per month. Only about 8 or 9 million are actually receiving the grant. That means that there's about 10 million South Africans who receive no income. So the test really is our budget geared towards eradicating poverty and not alleviating poverty? And to do that, the real question the minister needs to ask is a cash transfer not a better solution for those South Africans?
But then, aside from wasteful expenditure, which we need to cut down on, there's also the issue of corruption and the waste in that aspect.
Yeah, the start. 5 years ago, the previous Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, said we're going to introduce zero-based budgeting. And zero-based budgeting is to find the wastage and the leakages in government, the programs and projects that are not delivering any impact, and to remove them from the department's budget and to allocate them to something more impactful. And it's really time that, given our fiscal constraints, that we implement the zero-based budgeting approach. We go into budgets of departments, we find underperforming projects and underperforming programs, and we shift that funding to where it will have a greater impact. Included in that process, we will eliminate wastage, leakage, and find corruption.
Thank you so much for your time. I also now have with me Mr. Steve Swart of the ACDP. Steve, you were on the Finance Committee. We spoke with the chairperson of that committee earlier on about this being an extremely important budget speech as compared to previous years, and that's specifically because of the statement of intent signed by GNU parties. Why do you think that this budget stands out more?
Well, absolutely. The point is well made that this is the first budget by the Government of National Unity, and we do see a positive sentiment coming through as a result of the Government of National Unity. Now, whilst we're not part of the GNU, we do exercise oversight, and we trust in that it will succeed in increasing economic growth and addressing the structural reforms that are needed for economic growth. We can't afford 1% economic growth, and that is our biggest problem. The expenditure is increasing and the revenue is not increasing. So we've got to increase economic growth, and we trust in that will happen up to 3% or even 5%. That's what the National Development Plan has indicated. So this is very crucial for us to really ignite economic growth so that we can collect more revenue and, of course, address the poverty and unemployment levels.
And on the issue of revenue, I mean, how concerned are you about government having to borrow more because we're not meeting the revenue targets that we want?
Yes, we've always indicated our great concern about escalating debt levels and the fact that we are peaking now at 75.5% of GDP as our total debt. Now, that is unsustainable. For an emerging economy like South Africa, 60% is the sustainable level, and we are way above that. And one thinks back to the days when our debt to GDP was 28-30%. And at that time, you could free up so much more funds that weren't being addressed and used for debt service costs for much needed other items. At the moment, 20 cents, more than 20 cents of every rand is used only for debt service costs. And that crowds out much needed expenditure on defense, our troops in the DRC, on crime fighting, health, education. So we've got to bring down our debt levels. One of the ways of doing that is economic growth. And of course, you know, the ACDP has always stood against corruption, wasteful expenditure. I keep saying, give the law enforcement agencies more funds so that they can collect more. The SIU, the Asset Forfeiture Unit, the Investigative Directorate Against Corruption, they've got powers, but they don't have sufficient funds for forensic investigations to collect the tens of billions of rands that are owed the state. And then, of course, SARS has indicated that there's up to 800 billion rand that is owed to it. Imagine if you only collected 10% of that. That would be 80 billion rand that could be added to the coffers and would enable the books to be more balanced and not have this escalating debt levels, which is unsustainable in the medium and long term.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Steve Swart of the ACDP, who of course also sits on the Justice Portfolio Committee, and that is why he is speaking about, arming crime prevention organizations like the NPA and the
Asset forfeiture.
Yes, because they are supposed to be assisting in terms of fighting corruption. But as things stand, there is the problem of funds, which we hear in all committees, all departments complain about the lack of funds that they are getting. So hopefully the parties will be hearing what it is that they want to hear this afternoon, and we will be speaking to more of them within the hour. Nompu?
All right. Thank you very much, my colleague there, Abra Barbier, reporting from the parliamentary precinct.